In 2053 in Australia, since the last war, the crime rate has increased by 800%, leading to a tremendous strain on the prison system. In an attempt to address this issue, the government created a rehabilitation isolation program which would have been considered inhumane at any other time. Prisoners were given a choice: serve their sentence in an isolated metal box without any civil rights or opt for voluntary immediate liquidation. Food and water in the boxes are provided at the discretion of the citizens whom the criminals betrayed. Anyone who breaks the rules or is caught escaping must be immediately liquidated, as the person is there by their own choice. Flying drones distribute the iron boxes to designated locations. Whether it's a seaside or a forest thicket doesn't really matter. The main thing is that settlements are nearby. In one such box, a young woman reminds herself daily that she is the master of her life and is locked up by her own desire. According to her sentence, she must spend 4 years there, with 735 days left to serve. But one day, after drinking her last water, the woman pulls out a hidden razor and hesitates at her throat several times. Then she commits the irreversible. Later, a young woman and a child come to the seaside. They are happy and full of energy. The boy takes a ball from the woman and throws it down, where an iron box stands at the edge of the shore. Hearing the noise, the woman locked inside the box opens her eyes. Finding herself bound hand and foot, she begins to free herself from the restraints. Her sentence is 7 years of imprisonment, and her term has just begun. Suddenly, a small window opens in the wall, and the woman shields herself from the bright sun, as it is quite dark inside. She sees the couple, but they walk away, paying no more attention to the box. The woman looks over the deserted shore, seeing waves crashing against the rocks below her box. Suddenly, she starts screaming, pleading to be let out. An image of a woman addressing the inmate by number 37113 appears on the screen. The criminal stood before a jury and was found guilty, sentenced to 7 years without the possibility of parole. Food and water will be provided at the discretion of the citizens. After successful rehabilitation, she can become a full-fledged citizen again and return to the city. The inmate listens to this sentence in horror, disagreeing with the decision, but she is reminded that she is here by her own choice. The woman screams and thrashes against the walls of the box, only to receive electric shocks in response. Yet she insists that she is innocent. The next morning comes. The woman's water ran out long ago, and she tries to attract someone's attention by banging a metal bowl against the wall of the box, but to no avail. To occupy herself, the inmate starts inspecting the box and discovers that the ceiling emits electric charges, not lethal, but quite perceptible. She feels the walls, but electricity is present everywhere, although even without it, there is no way to open the door from the inside. Around her box on the shore stand many such separate chambers, but it is impossible to communicate with anyone. The thirst becomes stronger, but there is no water, and the woman does what she can to forget, even for a moment. She lies down to sleep. At this time, in the neighboring box, a woman sentenced to 2 years of imprisonment regains consciousness. Her body is covered in wounds, causing the convict suffering. To distract herself, she tries to shout to her neighbor, then attempts to open the doors. However, the warning system immediately activates. It turns out this is her last warning, and the woman will now be liquidated. The unfortunate woman screams, begging not to do this, but the ceiling starts to descend. Just as liquidation is imminent, the system suddenly freezes. But as soon as the woman catches her breath, hoping for mercy, the ceiling descends. The next morning, inmate number 37113 searches her box again and tries to collect a bit of water from a small hole in the ceiling, but the sip she manages to get does not quench her thirst at all. Suddenly, she hears a voice from outside. A young girl stands at her window, asking about the length of her sentence. Hearing the number 7, she deduces that the woman was accused of a political crime, pours some water into her pot, and hands over a small bag of food. The girl reminds her that the life of a convict is in the hands of the citizens, and she is not the first to depend on their will, and certainly not the last. The woman again states her innocence, but the girl leaves. Several days pass, as indicated by the wall indicator. During this time, in the neighboring box, a young man serves his 5-year sentence, reminding himself that he is there by his own will. Time passes and the boxes are moved to the forest. One day, a young girl comes to box 37113 and tells the inmate about Shakespeare, whose books are blacklisted along with others. Learning that reading is forbidden during rehabilitation, she is very surprised. She calls the convict to the window, squeezes her hand, and reads an excerpt from Romeo and Juliet, then offers her the book. However, the woman refuses, as it's against the rules, and accepts the bag of food. The girl promises to come back and read to her. There are 2189 days left until the end of rehabilitation. The woman eats the food brought to her and finds a miniature Shakespeare book at the bottom of the bag. Somehow, she manages to collect enough water to wash her body and brings herself to relative order. But the old wounds do not heal. Instead, they become inflamed, causing unbearable pain. Later, her box ends up on the seashore again. A city woman inquires about her crime and explains that she visits and talks to those willing to understand whom to feed. The inmate confesses that she had a young sister just like the visitor, reminding her of her. She reads and rereads her miniature book, which she now knows by heart. And again, she faces a new day. One day, a man comes to her box with an apple. She begs for a piece, but while he cannot give it to her, he is willing to exchange it for a dirty favor. The woman reluctantly agrees, which a monitoring drone notices, beginning to shoot, injuring the inmate. But she receives a whole apple, which she bites into with relish. However, worms are found inside, causing the woman to experience vomiting spasms. Immediately, the surveillance system activates, announcing a rule violation for which she will be punished by being deprived of sleep for 7 days. And if the bargaining for food repeats, she will be destroyed. For a whole week, a loud siren sounds in the box, preventing the unfortunate woman from sleeping and driving her mad. Time passes. There are 1,801 days left until the end of the term. The woman tries to ignore the constantly sounding siren, but she cannot. Soon, she sees a young woman through the window while the system's voice informs her of the amnesty granted to her and her immediate release. Suddenly, the woman finds herself in her box. She sits on a small sofa, enjoying a drink in a shiny cup, and laughs at the convict who has hit rock bottom. The world seems like a ride in an amusement park, going up and down, spinning around, stirring and scaring. But sometimes it amuses. Many are on this ride, gradually pondering its reality. Then an impassive voice announces the end of the punishment. She can continue her rehabilitation because the woman on the sofa was just a hallucination. At night, the inmate sees distant fireworks and hears announcements about amnesties. However, political prisoners are not included in such amnesties. Soon, the woman's teeth begin to fall out. One day, an old woman who had also served 15 years in a box comes to her window. She brings the unfortunate razors because she hates what she has become. Another morning arrives, and the Shakespeare enthusiast visits the woman. She pours her water and reads poems again, stroking the inmate's hands. Time goes on, and the woman's pregnancy becomes evident after trading for the apple. One night, city women come to her, offering to help her escape, but alarm signals sound immediately, and the woman asks to be left alone. In the morning, a new visitor comes to her window. The man is surprised to see her belly and offers to relieve her of her suffering, pointing to a burning box behind him, suggesting that a quick death is the pinnacle of mercy. Later, the woman lies on the floor and suddenly notices that there are bolts among the spikes in the ceiling. She unscrews them and uses one as a makeshift nail file. However, holes appear in the ceiling. A day comes when the woman gives birth to a child. She is no longer alone, but the system immediately notices the presence of an extra being in the box, which must be immediately addressed. After some time, the woman regains consciousness, but her child is no longer there. She screams and cries, demanding her daughter back, but the system remains silent. Later, a storm hits the shore. Trying to collect water, the woman loses her bowl and tries to retrieve it, but only injures her hand and suffers, not knowing how to ease the pain in her dislocated shoulder. There are 999 days left when a bug crawls into the box. The woman catches and eats it. At night, it starts to rain, and the box fills with water because there are now many holes in the roof. The inmate tries to plug them, but it's futile, and soon the water in the box rises quite high. The inmate freezes, but can do nothing. She remembers Shakespeare's poems when the system announces an upcoming liquidation for breaking the rules. A countdown begins. A drone picks up the box and carries it towards the sea. But suddenly, lightning strikes it and the box falls down at the very edge of the sea. In the morning, city women with a child come to the shore. They play ball when they suddenly notice the box, and on the shore lies a woman. Suddenly, she raises her head and sees the free citizens walking away. It's very contradictory film. Sometimes it's entirely unclear what the creator intended. Is it a hint that the woman has always been in some kind of mental cage? Or could the main message be the phrase that people are always where they want to be? Apparently, it's up to the viewer to decide. But to do so, one must watch it to the end, which is not easy.